I love the state of metal today. There's so much creativity, so much variety in the worldwide metal scene at the moment. And I know to outsiders it might sound a little bit ridiculous sometimes, the way we metalheads divide everything into subgenres and subgenres. But I gotta say, it actually kind of makes sense, because there's really so many bands that sound so vastly different from each other, but they still belong to the family tree of metal as a whole. So it kind of makes sense to try to come up with ways to describe all those different sounds, all those different approaches. And there's just a flood of new releases that come out pretty much every week, and not all of them are great, but a lot of them are actually really good. And that's why I figured I'll put together a little list of my personal favorite metal albums of 2023 and share it with y'all. I am Manuel Gemperli. I'm the co-owner of 22 Sound, a record store in Mandeville, Louisiana. For those of you not familiar with the area, that's right outside of New Orleans. So hope you can check us out one day. If you're too far away, check out our website. You can shop our store there as well. It's 22soundrecords.com. So yeah, this video, just want to share those metal albums that really excited me this year, or excited me the most. And I kind of put them in ascending order of greatness throughout the video, but as I said initially, so many bands are so different from each other, it's really hard to compare them, so it's not really a hard ranking. But at the very end, I have one album that me personally, or for me personally, is my favorite, the one I was just most excited about and just go back to listen to over and over again. And I'll put that at the very end of the video today. So let's start with my little list. It's Crystal Coffin, first one on the list, and their album, The Curse of Immortality. This is a melodic black metal album, and I find they really figured out a really unique way to approach this genre, that's a subgenre that's been around for a while. It is one of my favorite metal subgenres in general. I love when bands combine melody, sometimes even beauty, with heaviness, with aggression, and that's something that melodic black metal has always done really greatly. But I found that in the last few years there's been a little bit of a staleness to the genre. There's been a lot of albums coming out that sound very similar to each other, so they really found kind of a way to find a new vibe and something unique about their sound. I'm generally not too interested in lyrics, especially in extreme metal. It's not that important to me, and that might have something to do with the fact that oftentimes you just simply can't understand a word that you're being screamed at. But with this album, this might kind of give you an idea of the vibe that it kind of portrays. Basically, the idea of the album is that it's a suicidal protagonist, lives in a world where death has been eliminated. Basically, everybody's immortal, and all the, I guess, the pitfalls that come with that. It's actually a very interesting thought pattern, so it's kind of have a science fiction idea behind the whole thing, and that, I guess, kind of sums up the way this album sounds in a way. It's there's a lot of traditional elements to it, even traditional metal before black metal to it, but still sounds very modern, kind of has its own vibe. They use some synthesizer, keyboards, piano even sometimes to add some flourishes, but never in a exaggerated way. It's not symphonic black metal or anything, really in a nice, tasteful way, and so give it really a nice, unique flavor. Great album to start out with. The next band is Enslaved. Their album, Heimdal. I don't think Enslaved really needs introduction to somebody who would have clicked on this video and thinking, obviously they're absolute legends of the genre, and they've been around for what feels like forever, and of course mostly associated with black metal. I guess that's kind of the first association that comes to mind when you think of Enslaved, but over the years they really kind of branched out in a lot of different directions. And yeah, black metal is still I guess, an ingredient of their sound at this point on this new album, but it's really mainly, I would probably call it just a progressive metal album. Has all the things that make that genre great. It's really long, unconventional song structures, a lot of ideas that they really give time to evolve, and they really sound to me at this point like a band that's just really comfortable in their own skin. They're really very confident. They do what they want to do. They don't really care about any kind of conventions, and it really works out great for them. It's nice to see that the band this deep into their career still sounds this fresh. A lot of kind of, you know, elements of the kind of the high part or the high era of prog of the 70s, but it never sounds like a throwback. It still sounds like a fresh album that should have come out this year or in this time. So really absolutely great album of some old heroes that still have really great ideas and yeah, really have the passion still to do things. Next one is actually two albums. It's Ulthar. Yeah, they didn't release just one album, but two. But they're actually kind of companion pieces to each other. It almost feels a little bit like a double album, but they were released separately. So in a nutshell, kind of the difference between them is one album has 8 songs at, you know, kind of quote-unquote regular length. Then the other album only has 2 songs at about 20 minutes each, so very expansive. But sound-wise, this is, yeah, the initial sound when you just get into it is really like that old school death metal, a little bit more on the weird side if you want. But yeah, because they use a lot of kind of unusual riffing, unusual time signatures at times, then of course really, especially on the second album, really expansive composition. So there's elements of what you would typically, I guess, associate with technical death metal, progressive death metal, but still has always that little bit of that, I don't know, that ugliness, that gnarliness of classic death metal. There's so many ideas on these two albums. It's insane. It's really super entertaining the whole time through, but it is a lot. Like, so it kind of makes sense that they separated it into 2 albums to kind of give you a little time to digest it. Sometimes it almost seems a little bit like a stream of consciousness. The way they never really sit on a riff very long. The next one comes around the corner and so on. It always goes forward. But very, very creative, super cool albums. I gotta say, listen to either one of them very, very often. Sound-wise, very similar both albums, but I think it probably makes sense to start with the one that has kind of the bite-sized songs, and then if you really like that, dive into the really long, expansive compositions. Next one up is another legendary band, really, Insomnium. They released their album Anno 1696 this year, and yeah, different from Enslaved as far as their career trajectory goes. They never really strayed away too far from their initial sound that they first got known for. It's a melodic death metal band, if you don't know them, from kind of like the earlier years of that subgenre, and just an extremely consistent band. I always think that they never release a bad album and they somehow always find new ways to make exciting albums without, as I said, straying too far away from their original sounds, but just adding enough new ingredients to it to keep it interesting. But I think especially what makes them able to do that and stay relevant is, I guess, that they're just really, really good songwriters. They have a knack for just really catchy, really memorable melodies, and that's really what I think sets them apart. That's my first association with Insomnium. On this record, they also show that they're just really good at really long compositions. I mean, they showed that with a Winter Skate. That was just one album of one 40-minute song. They don't go this crazy this time, but they have longer songs on here, but they also have some songs where they get to the point quicker, a little more conventional song structures, and either way it just works out really well. And the way the album flows with those longer and shorter songs, with quieter and heavier moments, It's just very, very well composed. Very great record. That was one of my early highlights of the year. Came out pretty early in the year, but still love it. Next one up is Horrendous and their new album, Ontological Mysterium. Yeah, I gotta say, this is a progressive death metal album, and I'm a little picky with my progressive rock or progressive metal. I just find sometimes there's a little bit too much brain and not enough heart and soul. I'm saying sometimes because I think if progressive metal is done right, it actually can be really great, because I love to be challenged. I love to go on a journey when I listen to music. I love how a lot of especially progressive metal bands really take the album think of the album as a whole, and use that span of time to really, tell sometimes really actually a story, or even if the songs aren't lyrically connected directly, it still seems to be an arc oftentimes. And so this is an album, or this is a band that really does it right to me. They really pick a little bit from different corners of the progressive world. It's not always aggressive. There are headbangable parts on there, but there's also sometimes parts that are just really beautiful. They use sometimes the kind of odd, if you will, time signatures, but never just for complexity's sake. It always seems to be in the service of the song, and it just all melts together really nicely. And yeah, as I said, sometimes progressive, maybe a little too much brain, not enough heart and soul, if you know what I mean with that. But I think with these guys, this is such a well thought through album, but at the same time it still feels like these are guys actually having fun together playing this stuff. Really great album. Next one is Out of Heaven, Infinite Psychic Depths. This is probably the straight up death metal album, if you will, that I enjoyed the most this year. In my initial review, I said sometimes there's a certain feeling about just getting hit by a riff, and I just love great riffs. That's kind of what it comes down to me oftentimes when it comes especially to death metal. And this is just, to me, probably the best collection of just riffs the whole time through. It's just one after the other. It's so much fun to listen to. It's such a high energy level. It doesn't let up. And yeah, that's really basically the best way to describe it. Just if you're in the mood for some riffs, this is the one to go to. It's an absolute feast. What a great album. Next one is, to me, a little bit of a surprise. I actually didn't have that high of an expectation for it. It is Avenged Sevenfold, Life is But a Dream. Yeah, full disclosure, I'm not the biggest Avenged Sevenfold fan, but I always respected them as musicians. They are great musicians. From the technical point of view, they're creative. They really came up with a unique sound that's very typical to them. I always respect that when bands really kind of have their own sound. Like you hear something and you know pretty much right away that's got to be them. But still, for some reason, it's sometimes hard to explain, that it just never really truly grabbed me on an emotional level, I guess. And so yeah, there was never that album that I really loved. Might have liked some of the stuff, but never the one that I really loved from beginning to the end. But so my expectations weren't super high, but I remember the first person that bought it at the store when it came out was so excited about it. I was like, okay, I need to at least check this out. And I gotta say, I was blown away. This is an absolutely wild album. It has so many different genre influences in here. It's insane. I mean, a lot of stuff like really outside of the metal or even rock world. There's, little ingredients of funk, soul, hip hop, pop, and some kind of like stuff that sounds more like soundtrack music, even classical little ingredients, but still at the same time it is clearly a metal album. and it clearly sounds like them. It's amazing. This sounds like it should have been chaotic and not worked out, but they somehow managed to take all these ingredients, all these ideas, and really piece them together to a cohesive whole, to really great songs, and songs that actually really also have an emotional heft to them, that are catchy. It's absolutely amazing. I'm really impressed by what they did on this record, and it's also not just impressive, but just really fun to listen to, super entertaining, and there's so much to discover on it. And as a little plus as well, I think Cosmic is probably the power ballad of the year. I know, looking at this list, you might not think that I'm a sucker for power ballads, but I am, and this is a really good one. Next one is Taubra and their album Therizo. Yeah, said initially, I love how metal is so has so much variety these days. It goes into so many different directions, and you can even say that just for black metal as its own little subgenre. It's melodic black metal, atmospheric black metal, avant-garde black metal, all the different little subgenres. But this is probably my favorite, just proper black metal album of the year. It is an album that just kind of strikes all the balances right, and I know it's kind of a weird thing to say about an album in a genre that's all about extremes, but what I mean with that is, for one, they just have enough little hints of melody in there to keep it interesting, to kind of, you know, season things up. They vary the tempo just enough times, even though it's mainly fast, but to just take the foot off the gas just enough times to keep it from being monotonous. The production too that's always kind of a interesting topic in black metal. Of course, some black metal albums are kind of on purpose made to sound quote unquote bad, and yeah, that's true, and sometimes it does actually kind of add to the eerie atmosphere of certain black metal records, but I think they found just the right balance here. It still sounds raw, it sounds evil, if you will, but at the same time you can really hear everything nicely. The instruments really jump at you out of the speakers. It's mixed nicely without being like, high gloss, super polished, just really the right balance. And yeah, it's just a lot of like super cool old school riffs, but yeah, really piece them together to keep it really interesting. Great songs, one after the other. I gotta say, this was one of my kind of surprise finds. Never heard of them before. It was their first album, just kind of came out of the blue, but it blew me away. Absolutely amazing album. Next one up is Tumult. Yeah, if you're a metal fan and you're this deep into a video only about metal, probably know Tumult already. And yeah, I think this is the album that really won me over. Always had a lot of respect for them, but I love, and I'm sure it's a little bit controversial, not everybody loved the direction that they went into in this album, because they kind of went full on progressive here, and me personally absolutely love it. I think they really just let their creative juices flow, total freedom, but they found a way to kind of combine the things that made them really great in the first place. They're really great at these kind of primitive old school death metal riffs, but they kept that in there in moments, but then also just expanded their sound to so many different directions. There are moments where almost sounds a little jazzy, it's like a little weird jazz chords in there, or moments when they just really become straight up beautiful, like especially Patrick's guitar playing. Sorry. He, if you're familiar with his other project, Dream Unending. He kind of hinted at that there, and what a beautiful guitar player he can be too. He's not just a riff master, and here he kind of has the ability to do both, and it's just absolutely amazing. I have to say, me personally, when I first heard it, didn't grab me right away. It was impressive, the musicianship, the amount of ideas, but it took me a few listens to truly start enjoying it and really get into it. But once I did, I couldn't get enough of it. It is really, truly for me, one of the artistic statements of the metal year. Absolutely amazing record. Alright, so these were 9 albums. It's time, or almost time, for my personal favorite of the metal year. But before I get to that, I just want to do a few honorable mentions. It's really hard to put a list together like this, or like edit your list down to just a few. So I just want to mention a few more, and I'm sure there's many more that I forgot about, or you know, as soon as I put the video up, I'm probably going to think of some that I should have included. But here's just a few honorable mentions. What I mean with that, also absolutely amazing records that you should check out, but just didn't quite make my top 10 today, if you will. Alright, one is Envision, The Gods That Build Tomorrow. This is mainly a hardcore record really, but I think it has enough metallic elements to it that people that are into metal might really enjoy that, especially in the guitars, as far as like the soloing goes, but also have even some twin guitar harmonies in there, something you don't really hear often in hardcore. It's not metalcore though. It's hardcore with metallic influences, you know what I mean. Fires in the Distance, Air Not Meant For Us. This is melodic death metal, a little bit on the slower, more mournful side. Lots of really soaring guitar melodies and piano. Great stuff. Majesties, Vast Reaches, Unclaimed. This is kind of like a throwback. It's basically a love letter to 90s Swedish death metal, or melodic 90s Swedish death metal. Two guys that played other great bands in their own right, kind of getting together to have, just fun with it. It really seems like, and it came out really cool. If you like, you know, Dark Tranquility, At the Gates, Early in Flames, those kind of things. Great album. Another one that's kind of like a throwback album in a way is Lamp of Murmuur, Saturnian Bloodstorm. That is heavily influenced by Immortal, especially kind of at the Heart of Winter era of Immortal, which of course was the best Immortal album. Great stuff. If you like that stuff, check them out as well. Crypta, Shades of Sorrow. That is a absolutely amazing death metal album with some thrashy influences too. I found on this album they actually expanded their sound a little bit, had put a little more like melodic elements in there too, in comparison to their debut. Stellar musicianship as well. Then we have Wayfarer, American Gothic. Wayfarer is kind of like Wild West black metal, if you want. It's kind of like large scale black metal, but with like influences of like Western movies, or the music that you would associate with like Western movies. I feel like that's the best way to describe it. Twangy guitars and stuff like that. Really great compositions. Aara, Triade III, Nyx. This is great atmospheric black metal. It really has kind of like that coldness of the second wave 90s black metal, but with some really soaring, euphoric, big melodies, but still that nice, coldness of that era. And then Enforced, War Remains. I said earlier, Out of Heaven is kind of, to me, the best compilation of just riffs this year. Enforced does something kind of similar, but on the thrashy end of the spectrum. Really cool stuff. Amazing amount of great riffs. All right, it is time for my personal favorite of the year, at least as of today. It's so hard to pick just one, especially since there's so many albums that are, for so many different reasons, amazing. But this is the one that kind of just excited me the most. It is Moonlight Sorcery, Horn Lord of the Thorned Castle. So yeah, I gotta say, I had really high expectations for this album. I loved their two EPs that they released before this one. This was their first actual full-length album, but especially when that first EP came out last year, I was just blown away. That was such a nice breath of fresh air for melodic black metal. So, I don't know, it was just so wild, so ferocious, so full of energy. And so I had really high expectations, but you know how it is with high expectations. Sometimes you kind of set yourself up for disappointment, but that really didn't happen here. I gotta say, it not only exceeded or not only met my expectations, it actually exceeded them. I found it has everything that made those debut or those first two EPs absolutely great, but more. It is even, yeah, they kind of added some more elements to it. It's not only just full throttle energy the whole time through, and I think that makes it actually even better. They do take the foot off the gas every now and then, which then makes a bigger impact on those slower parts, on those more pretty, if you will, parts, but also actually on the faster, more aggressive parts. I think that dynamic, that back and forth always helps to keep stuff really interesting, and they're doing a great job at this. And of course, this is a guitar album. I mean, the guitar is just absolutely insane. I'm not sure who of the two guitarists plays what parts, so I'm just gonna talk about them as in plural form. But they are, first of all, I mean, they shred like crazy. I mean, sometimes it just sounds like it's evil Ingrid Malmsteen going nuts here. So that's kind of like the obvious part, like from a technical point of view, absolutely insane. But I always say I love some shredding every now and then, so that's really cool, but it has to be mixed with, you know, melody, with riffs, so it's, you know, with other things. Just shredding gets really boring very soon, and they really find a great balance. So you use that as one thing where it gets like really euphoric and wild, but then they are also very good at just coming up with really memorable, really catchy melodies, and also great riffs, great chord progressions. I love that they actually even included a little bit more keyboards on this one without going overboard, as in comparison to their EPs. It's just done really right. One reference point for me is actually Children of Bodom. The first EP already reminded me in parts a little bit of them. This actually reminds me of them even more. Early Children of Bodom, and to me that's absolutely a plus. I love them, so that's definitely a great thing. This is leaning a little bit more into the black metal side of things, but yeah, just a great album throughout. Enjoyed it very much, and just the way they have been adding little things in their very, very short career so far makes me very hopeful that they're gonna come up with some more really great stuff over the years. Yeah, really promising new band, really great album for this year. So this concludes my list. I would love to see your list or just your favorite album of the year in the comments. I gotta say, I love year-end lists. I'm really looking forward to seeing what other people put on their lists. Almost every year end up discovering some really great albums this way that I might have missed, or maybe didn't give enough time throughout the year in the midst of all the other releases. So yeah, let me know in the comments what are your favorites. Would love to hear that. And of course, subscribe to our channel, like our video, follow us on social media, all those things. That's always great too. But the greatest thing would be if we could see you at our store. If you're too far away, at least in our web store. All right, thank you very much for watching.